Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to give it just a moment while folks filter in from the waiting room, and we'll get started in just a moment. Okay, let's dive in. My name is John Hockman. I'm one of the principals here at McKinley Advisors, and we're thrilled that you could join us today for this conversation around, riding the waves into 2022 and beyond. Hard to believe we're at December 1st, but I think we're all staring into the new year and wondering, gosh, what will that year be like compared to the years we've had? I'm so thrilled to introduce you to a number of members of the McKinley team. Since I joined McKinley almost 5 years ago now, I have said over and over again, the best part of being in this team are the people who work here, the brilliant, talented people. And I'm looking forward to you hearing some of their thoughts today as we go forward. As I think you all know, McKinley works in the areas of strategy, organizational excellence, business transformation, and research and analytics. And we'll weave all those topics in as we go forward today and really think about what lies ahead for us as leaders in the association community. So the first thing we want to do is do some introductions and give each of the folks who are joining me today a moment to tell a little bit about their background. And so first up, I will turn to Megan Cruz to do a brief introduction of herself. Megan?
Wonderful. Hi, good morning and welcome everyone. My name is Megan Cruz. I'm thrilled to be part of the McKinley consulting team. I come to McKinley with about 14 years of association management experience, having served in a number of roles from working with international volunteers and relationships to serving as executive director for a number of associations by way of an association management company role. I combined that experience with some prior personal training experience in the fitness industry to bring kind of another element of coaching and leadership to the team. So good to be with you all this morning.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Next up is Mina Dayak. Mina.
Hi, welcome everyone. I am so thrilled to be here with my colleagues and with all of you. So I'm Mina Dayak and a director consulting at McKinley. I have about 15 years of association experience. I've worked for 2 trade associations, primarily doing marketing and communications, leading that side of things, and also participating in shaping strategic growth initiatives. And I spent the last couple years in healthcare content development, executive education, and consulting firm where I had the privilege to kind of work with the same members that I had worked with in a prior association life. So got to kind of see things from different sides of the equation. And I am thrilled to kind of bring all that together and be with McKinley now.
Terrific. Thanks, Mina. And Ankur Panda.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ankur Panda. I'm a senior consultant with McKinley Advisors. I bring about 10 plus years of association and nonprofit experience to McKinley. My last 2 stints were at higher education associations, and in those two associations, I had the pleasure of working on both the conference planning side as well as the membership development, recruitment, retention piece of the association. So I feel like I have a sense of the 2 major revenue drivers of the association world. So great to be with you all today, and I'm excited to be here with you all today.
Thank you all. So we're going to spend the vast majority of our time in a looking forward perspective. But we do want to spend just a couple minutes looking back, not to rehash conversations all of us have been having too often, but to acknowledge, look, if we go with this riding the waves metaphor, we've been in class 5 rapids the last 2 years, right? I think we all know between a pandemic, social justice issues, climate issues, it has just been unbelievably chaotic. And we don't want to rehash those, but I am interested in hearing from our panelists. What elements of those do you see as waves that will carry forward? So, you know, what's going to be with us for a while from your perspective? And Encore, if I could, I'd like to start with you in terms of what are your thoughts about how some of what we've been experiencing may carry forward?
Yeah, I think that's a great question to kick things off. I definitely think, you know, the COVID pandemic will continue to have an effect on membership, potential impact on you know, membership retention rates, and just, you know, people understanding the value of an association membership. I think even with kind of climate and politics as you know, political activity you know, continues to sort of like gain traction, that obviously has an impact on advocacy work and kind of federal and local affairs. And for many associations, you know, advocacy can be a very huge key member benefit. So it's going to be interesting to see how associations who kind of have the resource powers, person power, and kind of center that as a huge member benefit, how they position that and how that has sort of a trickle down effect on membership moving forward. So I think those two pieces will definitely continue to see an effect in the future moving forward.
Great, thanks. And Megan, what would you add? I know you do a lot of work in the governance and leadership space, but what do you see as carry forwards from what we've been experiencing in recent years?
Sure. You know, I think that the biggest thing we learned and saw is what happens to those best laid plans, right? So kind of some lessons around what it even means to be strategic as a board and as an organization. It really never was, but it's definitely no longer about making a plan and then counting on that plan being relevant for 3 years and then sitting down and look at it again. So really needing to think of strategy as something moving, breathing, evolving, constantly having your eyes on the horizon. And I think coupled with everything that's happened over the last couple of years is that need to focus again on prioritizing from a staff perspective and a staff resource perspective. You know, I saw a lot of staff reacting quickly to meet quick moving needs, to meet new challenges of members, to completely revamp meeting structures and maybe plan meetings double and triple times. But to understand that to really do things well, organizations need to have a keen eye to that limited capacity of resources, and that includes staff time and volunteer time.
And Mina, I'd love to get you in on this as well. What do you see as implications carrying forward from the whitewater we've been navigating?
So big, sort of looking at it over the past almost couple years, I saw such deep divisions, right? Like we all saw the divisions in our own worlds, among even our own family and friends. And that division really caused, I think, gave rise to a need for members to be able to dialogue, right? Like to talk with others too. In that sort of isolated virtual space that we were in, everybody felt a need to have some dialogue, to talk with people, to get like a variety of views, to connect with like-minded people. And associations had such a huge role there in being able to bring people together, to connect in various ways, whether that was talking in an online community, getting together at virtual meetings, just talking with association staff. And I also feel like, you know, Ankur, you talked about the important, what this did to advocacy, but I feel like we came to a point where associations can't really afford to be insular and neutral and say, I'm not touching that issue, it's too controversial. In order to be real and to really resonate with our members and members' lives, associations do need to take a stand, like at least need to provide a forum for dialogue on all issues. And I think we're really well positioned to do that. And then on the bright side of things, I think, as Megan, as you said, I really saw that we were very responsive. We were able to make the pivot. I know it's an overused word, but we were very flexible, right? And so my hope is that moving forward, that we won't lose that we won't just say, okay, it's over now, we did what we had to do. We'll go back to whatever the new normal is with business as usual. And I really hope we'll be able to carry that forward, that responsiveness, that agility, and being able to work with our members wherever they were.
I want to pick up on the point you made about sort of the expectation is that associations have a point of view on important matters before, and that's very different than before. And in my experience, it's caused a lot of discomfort for a lot of leaders, boards in particular. Like, why are we taking a stand on this? Why are we, we're not trying to make enemies. Well, the expectation is that you take a stand on lots of issues. And so that's just a very different way of being for associations. And I don't think that's going away anytime soon. So it's going to have significant leadership implications and communication fallout on a going forward basis. Thank you. I want to move to a next topic here, and it's really, what's the future of association membership going forward? For the most part, we've engaged a lot more people. Most groups have engaged with many, many more people in the last 2 years. Of course, many of those were non-members. And at the same time, in many ways, we kind of tossed out our pricing models and just opened the gates for folks because it felt like the right thing to do at the time. And, what's that do to the future of membership, and how do we try and engage with folks, recruit in folks that haven't been members but have been engaging with us, and how the heck do we price all this? So Ankur, I'd love to get some of your early thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really interesting is, you have seen a lot of non-members who have sort of not traditionally been in the association kind of fold engage with and sort of find a home association. So I think one thing that's really important to capitalize on that momentum that associations have possibly seen during the COVID pandemic, and as we're still in it. I think one sort of dynamic that's changed by having more people join associations is really seeing sort of the generational differences between membership. Right now we're kind of seeing potentially 5 generations in one association. That can alter an association dynamic, but from a governance perspective, volunteer engagement, in terms of marketing and messaging, in terms of the delivery of content. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how associations continue to sort of manage that dynamic. And as associations, the silent generation probably may not continue to remain as active. How do we sort of create opportunities for Gen Z and millennials to really stay active in the association space, and how to make sure the association is still relevant for their emerging needs? I think we're going to see a lot of discussions happening at a leadership level regarding that issue. And from a dues issue, I think there are going to be a lot of associations that are really evaluating their dues model, maybe having sort of like a basic access that everyone has access to, and then maybe looking at if people want sort of premium full access, maybe just sort of charging your premium for sort of the gold or silver benefit levels. I think you're going to see a lot of that discussion happening as well.
Yeah. I'd love to pull you in, from a marketing and communications perspective. What do we need to do to continue to connect with those with whom we've engaged in the last couple of years in meaningful ways that are durable, that really stand the test of time? What are your thoughts there around engaging with those folks?
I'd really like to pick up on what Ankur said about, consider the different generations in the workplace, and even beyond generational, just think of how we all live our lives now. Pretty much everything that we want to do can be done, say, just using our phones here, right? So think about meeting members where they are, and really making it easy to do business with us as associations, right? Like, it has to be seamless. Don't wait until they can go check their email. Be flexible in the channels through which you reach your members. And no matter where they are, whether they're on their laptops, their tablets, their phones, whatever they're doing, make it easy for them to connect with your association. Think about how I'm able to do everything I want to do get everything I need to get through Amazon Prime. I'm reading a book on my Kindle, but if I'm driving in the car, I can switch to Audible if I have it. I can switch from voice to reading to, everything is just so seamless and so mobile in our world today. So we as associations should be thinking about how we can deliver our benefits and make it easy for members to engage with us, no matter what platform they're on. And that's the way we're just going to be totally embedded in their lives, and we become top of mind for them. So it really comes down to, I think, technology and thinking about connecting associations with the way people live their lives.
I want to just freeform here, because I'm guessing there's a number of people listening to what you just said, Mina, and said, I totally agree with you, but there's no way my association has the resources to pull that off. Like this, the dollars and the time and the skills, we don't have it. Any thoughts on, how do you sort of right size that set of expectations I think you beautifully articulated for the resource availability of a lot of our folks who are probably listening right now? Any thoughts?
Well, some of it is technology, some of it is the expertise, but then we do want to tie it back to expected revenue, right? Like, I think if we stop to crunch the numbers and look at the possible return on investment, and look at if we have a strategic plan and we look at our goals, and if our goals relate to greater engagement, greater revenue, then you want to go back and say, where are we, right? Like, what do we need to invest in this? Whether it's bringing in the right level of expertise or hiring people who are able to think that way, who are able to relate to the way our members are today. And I think a lot of it is a mindset, but then part of it is also just having that business mindset, right? Like, you're not going to be able to realize the return if you don't invest what you need to invest in the infrastructure and in the systems. So that should really inform our thinking, and not just, oh my gosh, like I don't have it in my budget today. Look at our reserves, look at where we can get the money from, but eventually it's going to pay off, and we have to be focused on what that possible return can be.
Yes, I'm hearing a key nugget on the ability to ride the waves of the future is rethinking our resource allocations and making those investments in. We're talking a lot about it a lot in this country these days in the infrastructure that's needed to support the association of the future, and that's going to require some rethinking of how we spend our time and our money. It's great.
Absolutely.
So what's moving from membership, what's the future of association governance? And Megan, I want to turn to you. One of my observations is that we really brought to light the inflexibility and the constraints of our existing governance models for the most part. And what I've heard from a lot of folks is they kind of chucked the way they typically were governing. They moved to a very different kind of thing, even though it's not necessarily codified in their rules. But what does governance need to look like to ride the waves of the future from your perspective? Megan?
Yeah, so a few things there. To your point, there's really that need to be flexible and nimble, and have flexible and nimble structures and bylaws and governing documents that allow for things like ad hoc committees, that allow for things like different charges being brought up, that create a space if there is a new idea, a new initiative, a new group that emerges that wants to have a voice, or something needs to be sunsetted, that there is that flexibility for those kind of things to happen. The other thing that I've seen a lot as more people have come into the association space is that more people's voices want to be heard, and that there's a strong feeling about wanting to make sure that you feel heard or represented, or your constituency, whatever that means, feels heard or represented. And there's really a need for governance structures, and then the supporting communications around those structures, to uncouple governance from the specific constituent voice. So, an example would be boards where there is not necessarily a seat for each geography, but a place on the board kind of takes that place, that if you're there, then you are speaking for a certain constituency. So really finding ways through communication very clearly to make it clear what that role on the board is and what that role is not, and then think creatively about other ways that you give voice and you give space for different groups to be seen and to be heard and to be contributors. And then one final thing that I have seen is that there really needs to be more communication between the governing body and the members. So particularly looking at the last couple of years, I saw a lot of boards jump right in and meet bi-weekly, weekly, almost daily, really working hard to get some things turned around and make some quick decisions. But in the meantime, sometimes what was lacking was that communication back to the membership of what was going on. And that created a void where there was a feeling that nobody was listening and nothing was being done, when that couldn't have been further from the truth. So it really brought to light that for boards and governing bodies to be working hard is terrific, but for there to be that constant communication of how they're working on behalf of the members and mission is equally as important.
Great. And I want to acknowledge Gwen. Thanks for putting a question in the chat, and encourage anyone to use the chat for comments or questions that you might have as we go along in our content. Encore, I wonder if you could follow up on some of the points Megan made in terms of that sort of broader volunteer experience and how members engage with the business of the association and getting things done. What do you see going on there, and what do we need to be thinking about for the future to more effectively leverage our volunteer members?
Yeah, I think just in my experience as an association professional, even just kind of speaking to our client base, association members, they're very passionate. They very much believe in the mission and vision of the organization, its kind of purpose in the marketplace, and its relevance in the space. And I think volunteers are always willing to kind of roll up their sleeves and kind of help support that very important work. I think there needs to be make sure the volunteer experience is inclusive. There needs to be some clarity on making sure there are clear pathways to get involved in the association, whether it's a sort of a long-term engagement with serving on the board, whether it's serving as a chair of a task force or committee, making sure that pathway is clear, or if people are sort of looking for a short-term stint with the association, if there's even like a 2-3 month level of involvement where they can volunteer and contribute, making sure that pathway is clear as well. And I think there needs to be sort of some level setting and clarity of expectations about, are you sort of a decision maker in this volunteer role? Are you sort of an influencer, strategic thinker, or is it kind of more of the doing action-oriented type role? I think clarifying those pieces can be helpful to drive volunteer engagement. And I think even just kind of looking at your geography as an association, if you're US-based versus international, do you feel the different regions and kind of the membership that you serve, are they represented fairly at across different fabrics of the association? So I think, and just making sure that that volunteer experience is accessible for everyone involved.
And I appreciate your question, and Megan, if you have any thoughts, but I'll just it occurs to me, Encore, as you talk about that broader volunteer engagement opportunity is among the ways we can hear voices from more folks, that they don't have to necessarily be at the board seat. There's lots of other ways to plug in. That, of course, requires us to be actively listening and communicating both ways with those folks to hear those voices. But Megan, anything quickly you would add on that front?
Absolutely, and thanks for the question. And John, to your point, creating those forums that are specifically for listening, whether they have a more formal structure like an advisory council whose specific purpose is to be together and advise the board or inform the board or staff or other governing bodies on specific issues, or whether it's a series of listening forums and town halls where the specific purpose is to come with your professional, your company, your constituent hat on, those kinds of opportunities, and then having the board with specific responsibility to listen more. I think those two elements coupled are really how you can get at this.
Great. Mina, I want to turn to you. In many ways, members found us, members and stakeholders found us in the last 2 years. They had really acute needs. They were urgent, and realized pretty quickly that many associations had resources and really helpful things that could help them navigate the whitewater that we've been in. Going forward, what do you see as the imperatives for ensuring that we continue to connect and help people be aware of what we have to offer, and that we're frankly listening to them so that we're responsive to the marketplace more broadly. Thoughts there, Mina?
I mean, I think it comes back to the word that I've heard all of you, right? Like use over and over again, listening. Listening is like the one big thing we do. But I guess as Gwen and Anne have been asking in the chat, like, how do we listen? How do we give sort of equal weight to different voices? What kind of mechanisms we have bears a lot of thought. And, one of my pet peeves is that for many of us in associations, listening takes the form of sort of a reactive survey, right? What did you think of the session I offered you? What did you think of that product that I rolled out? What did you think of this speaker? Or, would you recommend us, like the infamous Net Promoter Score, would you recommend our association to anyone else? That's all very well, but I feel like we have to ask the question of what's keeping you up at night, right? Like really take the time to understand what their problems are, so that if we are not, as an association, offering a solution today, we can go back and think about, is there anything we can do to help these people? And I'll give you an example. The last couple of years when I could not rely on those face-to-face opportunities, I'm going to be at a meeting, I'm going to have a conversation with you in the hallway, I decided to invest more time in just setting up one-on-one meetings with some of our members and saying, it wasn't an agenda of like, hey, this is what we have for you. It was simply like, tell me, like, what's going on with you? I know there's COVID, but what are your big concerns today? Like, let's just talk. And I learned about some of the key issues they were grappling with during those conversations, and was really able to apply that into saying, okay, we can go back and maybe develop a toolkit or resources to help you grapple with this problem. So how we listen is important. And obviously, those of us that have 40 and 50,000 members cannot rely just on those one-on-one conversations. So thinking about, again, how can we use technology and automation and the channels we have to really enable that two-way conversation and ask the right kind of questions. And I think the other piece of it too for me is, even if members are concerned with their day-to-day, right? What keeps them up at night is the big issue that's hurting today. But obviously we as associations have a job. Our job, I think, is to be strategic, to help think about what's going to happen 5 years down the line, right? Like, are you going to have new competition? Can you be in business? Can you sustain what you're doing? Think about potential threats. We scope out what's coming and we help lead them along that path. So they may not be necessarily expressing it as a need, but if you're listening to all of the voices in the space, then I think we'll be able to lead them down that path. And then we always have to find the balance between over communicating, like stop inundating them with 5 emails a day coming from different departments and different divisions. Think about how we can be thoughtful. But on the other hand, there might be things that we're actually doing that we fail to talk about, right? We may be really into diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, but forget to tell our members what we're doing. So finding that right balance and coordinating our voices across the association to sort of present an integrated flow of information would be important.
Great. So I'm going to move topic. Clearly, listening is a big thread. I think we've established that, and there's lots of work to do there, and great points that folks have just made. But to move to a new topic, we can't possibly talk about the last 2 years without talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the challenges and the really, really deep problems that need to trigger action going forward. It's multifaceted, it involves everybody, it's uncomfortable, it's complicated, and a really tough leadership moment for associations, because not everybody is at the same place with where DE&I goes. Megan, I want to go to you to say, what do you see as the role of governance in advancing DE&I for an association? So we're making the assumption associations need to be engaged with it, but what's the unique role of the board in this conversation from your perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question. many associations have embraced DE&I and have brought on special initiatives, task forces, and it's a great place to get an organization starting to think there. There's opportunity to move from, what I would say, kind of doing DE&I or having it as a separate initiative into a place where you're really making sure it's a thread running through everything. So instead of a separate initiative or strategy, eventually there should always be that question of how can this be done more inclusively? Who's missing from this conversation? And this starts with the board, and they're setting a strategic direction, including, what board representation looks like. So as the main group starting that direction out, having that first line of thought of who do we need to be listening to set the right direction, to make the right decisions?
We increasingly are talking about the board's role in DE&I is sort of equivalent with their fiduciary responsibilities, of care, loyalty, obedience, that while it doesn't have the same legal connection that we typically connect to the fiduciary role, is that that is just a core duty of boards going forward, right? Is to make sure the organization is paying attention to DE&I and producing results there. So really interesting stuff lies ahead there. I want to have another, my light just went out on me. I haven't moved in long enough. Another dimension of inclusion, and Mina, as we said a few minutes ago, we've engaged with so many more people in the last 2 years. Lots and lots of folks, members and non-members, have connected with their associations. What do we need to think about to continue to engage people, members, and hopefully turn the non-members into members on a going forward basis?
I think obviously associations differ in their approaches, but what I've seen by and large is that in associations, whether trade or professional societies, people tend to focus so much of their energy just on members, on getting people in through the membership door, and then sort of encouraging them to engage and to participate and to buy more or to use more of their benefits, right? But I think, just given, again, the way the world is operating now, look at the other side of things too. What if we were to focus more on connecting with people where membership is not a barrier to entry, right? Like maybe somebody just comes in on the transactional side, and maybe they just want this report, or maybe they just want to attend the annual meeting. Meet them where they are, again, I guess would be my piece. We may not be able to be everything to everyone, right? So let's just meet people where they are. And if a certain transaction or a series of transactions is all they want with us, then let's nurture them in that way and give them that too. Membership is really, really important, but let's recognize that not everybody may want to be a member. And so let's really expand our horizons in terms of thinking about all of our stakeholders and how we want to engage with them. Because I think, going back to what we talked about at the beginning, we need to have a voice on the key issues that are facing our world, right? And to do that, we, in my mind, we definitely need to think beyond membership.
Yeah, it's just a mind bender for a lot of our leaders, right? To think, well, we want everyone to be a member. Everyone has to be a member. Well, maybe there's other ways to engage.
Yeah, I'm probably not very popular for putting that out, but
no, I think it's, hey, part of what we're doing is some provocations for where we need to go.
Hey, if I didn't have my Prime membership, I probably still would need to go to Amazon to buy stuff, and eventually I'll become a member. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, agreed. Encore, how do we build value propositions that are truly inclusive, really offer genuine equity, and really resonate with lots of different people? I think historically associations have been pretty one size fits all, and I don't think that's been inclusive enough. But in the future, we need to. What do you think that looks like?
Yeah, I think, speaking to kind of what Mina said a little bit earlier, it was just the barrier to entry. I think part of it starts with dues, and just making sure that if you are a new young professional kind of coming into the field, but you want to affiliate with your home association, could there be a way where there's a young professional or new professional due structure in place, and then as sort of you get your feet wet and entrenched in the field, they sort of graduate to a different tier, a dues tier level. I think that's a great way to make sure it's inclusive and to make sure that there's no barrier to entry to join to begin with. I think it's also looking at your member benefits and really saying, are the member benefits kind of applicable all across the board, and really looking at your membership almost like a benefits and kind of gap analysis and seeing, does this particular benefit resonate with in the same way as a person who is of a different generation or a different geography, or even within the United States? Does it kind of make sense for me? Does this benefit make sense for me? So I think doing a really thorough examination of your benefits portfolio would be helpful to address some potential inequities in association membership. I think even just creating some affinity groups for different identities, and just making sure that people feel like they have a safe space and a home within the association to kind of meet people. I think that's a great way to address member diversity as well.
Great, thank you. So I want to bring a new topic in. Although we've referenced it several times here, but we're layering in things to think about for the future. So let's talk money. The business model of almost every group has been turned on its head. And while certainly in-person events or the absence of in-person events is a part of that, it's not all of it. For those that have scholarly publishing, that whole world is in complete tumult. It's just, what's the future of offices, and how's that connected to budget and how we spend our money? It's just lots of ways that we have to figure out sustainable business models for the future, including, can we make any money off of hybrid events, and what's that look like? So, Mina, what do you think about sustainable business models for the future of associations, and how do we need to be thinking about it in 2022 and beyond?
I think, John, that for me would probably be a couple things, from communication and how do we make it easy for them. One, we need to really think about having flexible models, right? Like, or at least considering a whole range of models. I think, as Ankur has been saying, I mean, do I want like a Netflix model where it's like an all-inclusive? If I'm going to have a lot of virtual events and virtual offerings, is it possible to crunch the numbers and come to a point where, along with the annual member dues, I can also encourage them to pay their conference fee, or pay the fee for other products, and just have access to everything, and not to have to go back and kind of go back for more each time, right? Like where I can just focus on engaging with them and not have to go in and get their money again. So this may not be the right answer for everyone, but are we at least thinking about things like this? I know there's a point in time when my meetings people and my membership people would have killed me for saying something like this. How dare you combine things? But just being able to take a look at it from the member perspective, not just from what can we do or what can we not do, but saying what's going to make their lives easier. And then ultimately it just comes down to ease of transactions for me. Are you just going to, is there a way you can just put a charge on my credit card monthly or annually or whatever until I say stop? Not that, I mean, I want to keep you informed, but I just want to make it easy for you, right? Like, if you're going to wait until I can go in and take 30 minutes at night to set everything up all over again, you're just making it that much more difficult. So do we have ways, like all consumer products have these days and services, to be able to keep members sticky and to make it kind of almost mindless for them to be saying, okay, that's taken care of, now it's just really up to me to go engage and to use those benefits. So those are just, I guess we need to first of all know that money is a good thing, supports our mission, and be prepared to be flexible. Just have that consumer mindset. Our members are ultimately consumers. So how do we provide a great experience and great service?
Yeah. And Megan, exhibitors and sponsors are a really important part of our business models as well. Do you have a thought there on how they could or should play into our business models of the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in line with a lot of things that were turned on their head when we faced virtual and hybrid meetings, some of our revenue models that came around, how we typically engage with industry partners and sponsors and exhibitors changed. And I think, in line with kind of our big word of the day, which is to listen, there's real opportunity and real need to reach out to some different constituencies where the engagement model really has been a certain way, like exhibiting, like getting in front of people in a way, and think together about how we can creatively rework those relationships and find new sources of value, especially if we're looking to keep revenue coming in from those sources. What are new and equally meaningful ways to engage when some of the old ways may have fallen by the wayside?
Great. I want to keep the revenue piece going for a second here. And Encore, you talked a little bit earlier about the future of membership and membership models. Anything you want to add about the revenue part of membership in a going forward basis?
Yeah, I would say as far as membership revenue goes, I think just drilling down into the data further, if you're experienced, if you're kind of steady all across the board, are there opportunities to grow, or where are you maybe susceptible in terms of membership revenue? If you're on a membership decline, look at further, where are you declining? And if you're growing, examine where are your growth opportunities, and kind of applying this whole, red ocean, blue ocean strategy, and just thinking about how you can effectively compete moving forward, and just seeing how the membership revenue, not only looking at it as a standalone figure, but how it has a trickle down effect on maybe your professional development, education, kind of that revenue line, and just seeing how those two are very much correlated. I think that'll be really helpful moving forward.
Great. Megan, new topic. As I think everyone here is probably a good participant in ASAE, and they have certainly led the message around Associations Advance America in recent years. And I think the last 2 years have helped us or reminded us of the critical role associations are playing, from public health to literally saving the earth, and from supply chains to civil discourse and how to speak to one another in reasonable ways. Associations are involved in all of that. How do we not just be a part of that work, but really be leaders in solving some of the grand challenges of our time? Thoughts on that, Megan?
Yeah, I think it's first being able to identify those opportunities. So in that same vein of associations doing more listening, they can stand to do more looking outside of themselves. Associations and their boards can really take time to reflect on what's going on in the world, what's going on in the country that may not so obviously be in their or their members' purview right now, and really engage in some generative thinking on it and on if and where they can be part of the solution in some of these areas. That may very well mean finding ways to help members connect and work together around new topics, or it may mean finding something that aligns well with mission that the organization doesn't necessarily have the capacity or the reach to accomplish well, and identifying new potential partnerships to help get there and to be part of that solution.
Amina, what are your thoughts on how we do that? How do we build partnerships, alliances, collaboration, bigger, deeper, stronger than we already have, if we're really going to do the kinds of things Megan just referenced?
I think somebody, might have been Anne in the chat, was talking about a seat at the table with regard to one of the other issues we discussed. And I think it comes back to that. I feel like we as associations really, really need to invest in raising our profile, raising our visibility, because we have so much expertise and so much like thought leadership, right? Like within association staff and executive leadership and boards. How do we really make that known? How do we share that? How do we raise visibility as a valuable contributor so that whenever there are important conversations happening, we will be invited and we'll have a seat at the table. So it's not just academia and government and think tanks that are invited, but associations should be seen as a key representative of the industry or profession and get invited. And I think the only way to get there is, in addition to building relationships with a variety of people, variety of stakeholders that you actually also raise your public visibility. So a real investment in that can pay off, really help you be the voice of your industry or profession. And I think one more thing for, and Megan, you probably know much more about this than I do, but increasingly it seems to me that because the issues we deal with are global, like whether that's climate change or supply chain issues, that we need to think globally as associations, right? Like even if we are the American Association of whatever, we really need to be thinking, if not about global membership, at least about collaborations and partnerships, because somebody else might have a solution to the problems that we are facing here, or we might be able to share. And we really need to think about what our role on the world stage is, just sort of an expansion of reach for us to go to. So Megan, I know you've done a lot of work in this area and probably have some thoughts about this, but I just really feel that, again, we have to stop being insular. We need to look out at the world outside us and engage in all of the issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right on. And having our members as part of that reach, knowing and asking our members what other organizations they're working with. And that's a great way to find potential partners, to find those global collaboration opportunities. Even if an organization doesn't already have a relationship or have that global reach, they may be able to, through where their members are playing, find places for collaboration.
Great. Mina, I'm going to come back to you to ask, what do we not know enough about that we need to become better informed to ride the waves going forward? Like, what's the data that's missing in the association equation? What kind of leadership thinking do we need? How do we need to look at what's before us differently to have greater, really, intelligence to navigate going forward? Mina, what are your thoughts?
John, I would say it's not so much that we don't have the data, as in that we don't maybe use it in the right way and at the right time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of data. We do engagement scoring, we do number crunching, we look at our email open rates, or we look at all kinds of data, and then it sits there, and then we make decisions based on emotion, right? Like, or legacy thinking, or what we need to hold on to. So to me, what's important is to really bring the two together and to actually use that data to inform our decisions and to inform how we move forward with strategy. So I think that's a key piece. And I think the other piece is just sort of being able to know that strategy is not just sort of taking what we've done before and dusting it off, but really being able to do it in the context of what's happening in the landscape, right? Like, I know a lot of us may not want to acknowledge it or may want to live in oblivion of it, but more and more, I think competition for every association is coming not just from other associations necessarily, but from for-profits, from just really well-capitalized, highly savvy companies that are getting into the space because they see it as lucrative. So we really have to do our strategic planning, our marketing, taking into account who our competition is and what they're doing, and thinking about what our unique value proposition is and how we can stand up to the competition. So data and sort of a really good sense of the landscape is what should inform how we move forward.
Yeah, and Ankur, anything through the membership lens, what do we need to better understand about our members? What kind of intelligence do we need specifically on that part of the equation to be effective in the future?
Yeah, I think in terms of, from a membership perspective, I think the cost to serve a membership is really important. I think because looking at, is it more expensive to serve non-US based members versus members that are based in the US? I think really looking at like why members join, and even looking at retention rates. I'm kind of thinking about like my higher ed background, and when admissions counselors go out and recruit students, it's cheaper to recruit a student than to lose them. So think of kind of your membership as the same way. It's a lot easier to kind of bring a member in the door and make sure you do everything you can to keep them to stay engaged. So really looking at your retention rates is really critical. I think even looking at just the potential pipeline of membership, we're noticing a lot of association clients, there's this potential kind of brain drain happening with seasoned professionals who may be retiring in the field in the next 5 years or so, 5 or 10 years, and then what that means from they're kind of your steady people who renew over and over again, and then how that has a potential impact on new members. Will you kind of replace them sort of at the same rate, and how that has a potential impact on cash flow. I think also just looking at the different kinds of benefits and member experience you're trying to create in the next 5 to 10 years, kind of what Mina said earlier, meeting members where they are and just having things very accessible in a very digital format. I think associations take a hard look at that as well, and just making sure that they're serving members now, but really doing some soul searching about what members need in 5 years and 10 years, because it takes time to develop a product, test it out, make some tweaks as needed. It definitely takes some time and investment.
Yeah, for sure. Megan, behind all this, the ability to sort of meet the moment going forward is going to have to be effective governance and leadership. What do organizations, what do associations need to be thinking about to ensure they've got the right kind of governance and leadership to ride the waves, to do the kinds of things we've been talking about so far in this conversation?
Organizations need to build governance and staff cultures that align volunteers and staff with the organizational mission. As priorities shift and resources shift with those priorities, successful organizations will rely on the ability of volunteer leaders and staff to see the picture bigger than their geographical or their subspecialty or other constituencies, or bigger than their individual departmental goals, and think creatively as one organization with one mission. So really building that culture to stay aligned with mission is critical.
Yeah. Much more difficult to do than to say, right? It's a lot of, anytime you're touching governance and leadership, it's tricky, but boy, do we need to lean into that work along the way. Mina, I'm going to come back to you. You mentioned a little bit earlier that sort of coming at things from lots of different ways. There's more competition than ever for members' time, talent, and treasure, and all sorts of folks who are interested in capitalizing on each of those factors. How do associations win going forward with all that competition out there?
There is a secret sauce. No, there really isn't. I think it really comes back to, from a communication perspective, I would just remind us that communication is a two-way street. So the more we can engage with members, the more we can have them weighing in, involved, the more successful we're likely to be. I would think that the difference between an association and a for-profit competitor needs to be not that we push stuff out at them, but that we actually involve them, right? Like recognition and belonging and community is a big reason why people want to be part of an association. So like playing to that, and giving members a chance to shine, to have exposure, to be able to weigh in on important issues. If we kind of have that mindset and know that we are kind of partners with our members, I think that could potentially be an edge over the competition. And I'll go back to what we've said, right? Like meet them where they are. In my world, it would be like think beyond email, right? Like engage with them, whether it's social media, wherever it is they want to be. Meet them right there and find ways to actually engage with them on all the channels that they're on. Like be in their lives, just be embedded in their lives, I guess would be what I would say.
Okay, as we near the top of the hour, let's finish with a rapid fire here. What's one piece of advice that each of you would give for folks to really effectively ride the waves of 2022 and beyond? What's just a nugget of wisdom that you pass on? And Megan, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. I have 3, but they're short. Listen more, fiercely focus on your mission, and be willing to change direction or priorities otherwise.
Those are great. That's great. Mina, same question to you. What's your nugget of wisdom to pass on to folks?
don't go back to a business as usual mindset. Really leverage the lessons we've learned in the last 2 years and know that things will be different, and keep that flexibility, keep that responsiveness.
I'm gonna interrupt my rapid fire here. Meena, any thoughts on how do we bring leaders along in that mindset? Because I think a lot of our leaders are, let's get back to in-person meetings and let's get back to the way I knew it. How do we overcome that?
I'll go back to what we said about data, right? Like if we dig deep, we probably have data on how we did and how maybe member engagement increased. And in my experience, for example, with virtual meetings, I've heard about how a lot more people were able to leverage the meeting that wouldn't be able to come otherwise because they can't get away, because they can't travel. So look at all of that data, put it in front of the leadership, and enable that to be the basis for decision making, which comes back to strategic planning, and having a strategy and allowing that strategy to be informed by data would be a really good way to go. And look for data on the competition too.
Absolutely. Encore, you're getting the last word. Our rapid fire question, what's your nugget of advice and wisdom for folks?
Yeah, I was going to say embracing a culture of data-informed decision making. I think sometimes we may rely on anecdata or past precedents, and we say, well, this is kind of how we've always done it. I think really looking at the numbers, because numbers don't lie, and just be willing to take risks and finding ways to mitigate the risks moving forward. And I know we talked a little bit about data earlier. I think part of the sometimes it can be very overwhelming to look at the data we have, but just making sure data is accessible to kind of everyone in the organization. Membership data is not only the director of membership's responsibility or the CEO's responsibility. It's membership is everyone's responsibility. So I think kind of having that kind of culture where data is accessible throughout the fabric of the organization is really important as well.
Great. Thank you, all three of you, for sharing your insights and wisdom. I hope everyone who has tuned in today can now see why I say my colleagues at McKinley are the greatest gift to me. It's tremendously inspiring to be surrounded by people like you all. So thank you. Thanks for listening in today, and we'll be in touch. If we don't talk to you before, have a great holiday season. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.